your artwork for digitizing. What is plotting out your artwork? Basically, it's going to be inserting lines in your logo to assist you in the digitizing. It speeds up the process, does a lot of things for you. So a huge thing that it does for me is it helps me work out the problem areas of designs, the real challenge areas, so I can have them thought out ahead of time, and I don't have to try and deal with that when I'm trying to come up with a good path and all good stitch types and everything else I need for a good design. So it helps you work out the problem areas. It also is going to give you really good consistency, like when you do lettering and things like that. All your letter heights are going to be consistently even, things like that. The biggest reason, though, that I say is it frees you up when you're digitizing the logo to just focus 100% on that. That is so important. And it's going to increase your digitizing speed because, as I'll show you, you'll have less editing to do on your shapes when you're done if you take a little bit of time to draw some lines in before you start. I've mentioned this before, you really need to sit down and look at a design before you just jump in and start digitizing, and you're going to get better results after. Certain things come up when you're going through how the path is going to go, and you go, wait, I can't do white there because of blue, so you'll switch and change it around. Makes it a lot more efficient, so it's going to increase your speed for that too. So let's get started on some. I put together a sample file. If you get my mouse over here, there we go. Different resolutions on the different screens drives the mouse crazy. So I put together a sample file that shows a lot of the different shapes that I do vector lines to help me with. Now, you don't have to use vector lines. If you don't have that option, you could easily use a walk stitch. As Nate has said in the past, don't forget when you're done before you sew it, delete those walk stitches or they will sew. That's what's kind of cool about vector lines, is I can put them in the design, leave them, save them, and of course vector lines don't sew. Okay, so let's start with just standard 1/4 inch letters. If you're going to choose to digitize your own letters, it's good to have some reference lines to help you with consistent compensation on push and stuff like that. Okay, so the first thing I do is grab the vector line tool, and I like to go with red because it sticks out pretty good and I can see it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish a height and baseline. So I will click here. I will hold Alt because it's going to constrain my line, and when I get to the end I can click also. Excuse me. So I'll highlight this. I can use Shift and the down arrow to move in increments of 1 point. So I'm going to just nudge that down a little bit. So that's going to set the overall height. Now I want to set another line that's going to tell me where I need to cut off all the letters that are stitching horizontally, because they're going to push up and down, unlike the C's and the S's that are going to actually shrink because they're stitching this direction. We've covered push compensation, pull compensation, and a lot of the other ones. Okay, so I'll take this vector line, Control D is duplicate, and then I'm going to hold Shift and again move it 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a good starting point. It kind of depends on how much pull compensation, pull offset you're going to use on your letters for how far that needs to go, but generally 4 points works really well on 1/4 inch type letters and thinner columns. Okay, so I have that established. I'm just going to grab them both now, Control D to duplicate again, and then I can just drag and move these guys down to establish the baseline. So I'll move it up 1, okay, right there. Okay, so now I have my heights established. When I digitize, like I said, if I'm going to hit the P's, it's going to be going all the way to the top, but when I come to the letters that stitch horizontally, I'm going to stop at this line and also at this line here. So this will make your letters very consistent, and again, it's one less thing to worry about. Kind of a help in this area too would be to switch cursors. I know I've always raved about the full screen crosshair. I've used it forever because it can save you time in having to draw these lines. So right now I have the arrow cursor. I'm going to go and switch under Tools, Options, Preferences to the full screen crosshair, sorry. Alright, so now when I grab, you can see I have everything. This is going to line me up because I can look here and see what's going on down the line, make sure everything is exactly parallel. So I like this full screen crosshair cursor unless I'm doing script. It can kind of get in the way. There is no straight perpendiculars that you want to line up to, and so a lot of times I'll switch to the arrow to do something like that. Okay, so after I have the height and base lines established, there's other issues like, I'll go to the A. Well, if I start here, where do I finish this corner here? Now, of course, depends how you digitize letters. Everybody's going to do them slightly different. But you'll have a hard time finding the inside points for the corners. So what I do is take the same vector line tool. I don't go the full height of the letter, just it can get a little confusing, so I'll do shorter sections, but I want to go from here straight up, enter, and I'll make another one from here straight up. Okay, so now what that gives me is when I'm digitizing the letter, I'll just do it real fast here for you, do the center leg, but when I'm doing these legs, I'm going to start here, hold Alt to make sure it's constrained horizontally. I'm going to go to these points, hit enter. Now I can start right here, go across, and go down. Enter. So that told me exactly where these interior points were without having to guess. So that's a time saver because you're never going to get them right the first time, and you're going to have to go back over and edit them. So this takes that completely out of the equation. So I'll use that for other letters. I got a good one right here. I'll turn off the stitches. So here's an M. This is made up of a lot more elements, right? Because I stitch this one up to here. I will do a full section across here and then come down to the leg. Same thing here and up here. So that's a few parts to the letter, but it's what it takes to make a good wide letter. If you just butt the columns up at the top, you'll find they never sit straight. It's always one is going to overlap the other, and so you don't get a clear top to the letter. So that's my point for doing that. You can also see that I used compensation. I fattened up some of these lines because these on V's and W's and M's, they visually it can look really skinny to your eye, and it's because it's at an angle. But anyway, if you fatten them up, they're going to look nice and thick like the letter should look. So I put all these vector lines in here also, and the crosshair cursor is going to help me out a ton. Okay, so the last thing I do is, as you can see up here, this is a single line column. Notice how the corners are squared off. You don't get good results if you just run the stitching at this angle and this end to this angle here. It's very sawtoothed. You want it to be straight or perpendicular to the edges of the column in order to get crispness. How far do you turn this? Everybody has different opinions on that. I like about the distance of the thickness of the column is how far I'm going to come in and then drop my perpendicular, so I know where to square that off. So I will do that here. You can see that I have an L. I'll grab the same tool and about right there, going straight up. And of course there would be another one about here going across. You can do this for entire words though, just like I did the height and base lines. I could do all the miters, like say the P's right here. If I had a bunch of them in this text, I could start here and go all the way across. Now that tells me, you know, that I square off every one as it hits this angle and every one here. So you can save a ton of time and you'll make sure that every one is exactly the right distance before it starts turning on the miter. So that can help you out a ton when it comes to digitizing lettering and stuff like that. Here it is finished. So I digitized this center out, you know, all that stuff. But you can see how the letters hit the different lines. Just perfect. It's funny because when I started digitizing in the 80s, I've talked about this before too. We used to, you couldn't work on screen. You had to work off of a digitizing tablet. And it was like a circuit board, 3 feet by 2 feet, with a mouse or a puck on it. And you would draw your artwork at 6 times the finished size. So if you had a 3-inch logo, it would be 18 inches. So it was like you had to draw a poster for each logo that you did. But it would go from the enlargement, so you take your image, put it in an enlarger, kind of like you had in school, that you pull back and it gets bigger on the screen. And so you would trace it out on paper, and then you'd take it to a drafting machine, and then you would clean up all the lines. You draw in all these height compensations, you draw the A's and the M's where they intersect, all that kind of stuff. And you would color them in so we could have the direction that the stitches went. I mean, when the drawing was finished, it was almost already done. The digitizing was kind of a smaller part of the process because you spent a lot of the time, you know, plotting it out, planning it out. You would list your colors in order so that all you have to focus on is your digitizing path and stitch types and stitch lengths and all that. When you're digitizing. So when I switched over to on-screen, it was like, wow, where can I draw my lines? I'm just missing all this. And so I started using walk stitches, like I said, and then it turned into vector lines as things progressed further. So you can use either, but what a difference that was. What a change going from the cartoons to the on-screen now. It was a lot faster once you got going, but interesting stories. Okay, so that shows you how to plot out block letters and sort of things of that nature. Another time when I use these vector lines is on script. Brush script is a beautiful font. I don't like it because it has been so difficult to digitize, really teeny and over the years. So anyway. Okay, so for this, if I'm trying to stitch a column this direction and I'm trying to turn this all the way around, I have so much surface area on the outside and almost none on the inside. It's a good time for holes in the garments or needle breaks or whatever. So this is ferocious to try and turn. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stitch this straight up and I'm going to stitch this straight down. And when you look at it, you really aren't going to see much of a difference from trying to bend it all the way around, if you could pull that off. Okay, so I'll grab the vector line tool again, and I'm just going to come in here and go straight, curve, and I'm going to show how this would normally finish off. Enter. Do a second one from the other one. Straight, curve, and how it would finish off. Enter. Sometimes you could put something to remind you if you need it, like to know that this one only goes to here and the other one goes all the way up. Okay, so now that those are in, I'll just digitize this really quickly for you. Column 2, column 1. Okay, we'll use column 2. So start, go to end of one side with a straight, hit enter, start the second side. Doing this real fast, so don't look too close. And I'll finish there. Enter. I'll give it my stitch direction line, and then I will start on a second one. So this one will go from up here to here, around the side. You know what I mean. I'll just stop it here. And then the second side will go from a smaller point, curve, straight, curve, curve, onward, and so forth. Enter, put a stitch direction in there. Okay, so now if I draw it in 3D, you can see how that comes out. it's like I say, much easier because you don't have to bend it. But if you're zoomed way back, you really don't barely notice that it doesn't bend all the way around. But that sure helps you see where to put your plot lines. So then I didn't have to focus on anything except hitting the lines that I drew. So pretty good. So you can use that for script and things like that. There is another one here, these corners. Now, if you have a single line column tool with corners, you could knock this out, but I'll show you a different way that I've done them for decades. What I'm going to do is, rather than try and bend the corner, we run into the same thing that we ran into on the last brush script letter, where there's so much surface area on the outside and barely any on the inside. So it creates trouble. So watch how easy this is to do. Grab the vector line tool. Now we'll go from here straight up, enter, catch the other leg, enter. Now I'm going to draw a line where those intersect. Enter. Okay, so now when I'm digitizing, I'll do a column one. So forth and so forth. Let's just say I'll start here. I digitize to this point here. Enter. Switch to walk. I'll walk up. Enter. Start my column. Right there. And so forth down the line till I finish. Alright, let me just give you a color so you can see. Okay, so you see how this came out here. Very nice. It's easy on the machine. Different way to try doing your acute angles. So you can see the same, excuse me, that I used on the M and the applications, it still works here too. It doesn't have to be for letters, but you can use these lines for so many reference things to save you time. So if you, like I was saying, there's no calculations. When I'm digitizing this, I know exactly where to go. It's not, well, how does this line up? Is this going to be wide enough? I mean, that stuff will drive you crazy. So you saw it took me very little time to put the lines in, but sure is worth it, time-saving wise. Okay. Also, circles. Here's one logo that I had done forever ago. And sometimes, like as in, well, with this, I could show you, let me see. I'll turn off all the stitches. Bitmap artwork can be a mess. Vector is so much better, but it is what it is, and a lot of stuff is still supplied in JPEGs and not good art. So what I choose to do here is to use the vector line, but I also use it with the circle tool. And so it's really easy. So all I would do here is grab my vector line tool, and then I would grab my circle, and Samantha shows this a lot on the Facebooks that she does. You can hold shift and it'll make it a perfect circle, right, when you make it. So this will allow you good reference for full circles, for arcs, for stuff like that. Here I used it, like I said, to perfectly define the circle, because it gets pretty sketchy. A lot of times what I like to do also is once I have one, I will control D maybe twice. So this is just going to put multiples here as ammunition. I could take the first one and just convert it right away to a single line. And then maybe later on I wish, oh, you know, there's something inside that's like concentric, and so I wish I still had that line. Just make a few, and if you don't use them, hey, so what, right? So vector line circles can really, really increase the quality and also save you tons of time. All right. I also use the vector lines just to give me references for stitch directions. I don't know if how many of you saw this one that we did on the Morning Glory. There's a full video on digitizing this from start to finish. You know, what do you consider foregrounds, backgrounds, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, this shows the vector lines that are going to show me what the angle of the fills, the stitch direction of the fills are. So you can see down here, leaves look really good if you do kind of a herringbone or a V shape. The light plays off it and makes it look more realistic than just a flat fill. So I put those to give me reference that that's the way the stitch directions go on each half of the leaf. This leaf, same deal. When it comes to the flowers, I did a curved fill on this, and so but I'm multiple stitch direction lines is I guess what it's technically called. So the fill will start here running this stitch direction, and it'll eventually change to perpendicular and then bend over here. So the light will play around and give it kind of a cool effect when I'm stitching it out. So that tells me that the end line is going to be at this angle, this end line will be over here, and then it will connect the two. Also, this is going to be a column, so I put one this direction to show me that I need to stitch it this way. I wouldn't want to stitch it up and down. Stuff like that can save you a ton of time. Also, let's say that this had black shading or something on it. If I know the direction that I used to do the green, let's say, fill, when I come back to do the black shading, I want to keep that same stitch direction angle so that the two of them blend much better. This can help you out in that. There's no guessing. All right. Another great use. I talked about how we would draw to square off the miters and all that stuff on the letters. If you have vectors, you can also do some really cool stuff with that. So I'll select this vector fill as all it is. Let's say that all of a sudden I needed to create outlined letters. Well, what I can do is first duplicate it, right? And then I'll go grab one. I can right click, go to operations, come down to offset outline, and let's say that this is going to be plus 15 points. Moves up. I would change, oh, I don't know, I could pick a color, then I would turn off the fill, so that now that gives me perfect offset line, so for say outlined letters. Then I can also come in here, grab another version that I did, or like I said, duplicate it, and then go back, operations, offset outline, and maybe I would go minus 15 here, so plus 15, minus 15, and then here again change it to whatever color and cut the fill. Now you could see that individually I got it all set so that I can shut off the vector letter if I wanted, or I can just digitize here. This tells me I can underlap, right? Sometimes we do outlined letters, you want to do the outline first because you can tuck it in so much further that gives you a nice width instead of trying to stuff it all around the edge and really thin and turning corners and all that. So this can get offset outline with the vector lines can give you a ton of time saving, and this is going to come out first when I do it. Everything is exactly straight. I know exactly where everything should be. It should come out just perfect. Also one more thing, sometimes you can use it to help you out in the thread path itself. Back when we used to do these cartoons, we would draw lines like when you finish this area you're going to go over here, and it would have an arrow to show you what to do in what order, again to get your focus off of too many details, so you can just focus on the digitizing path and how to do it right, uninterrupted, and all that. So how do I do those lines? Again, vector. And I'll show you for this example here with these stars. These stars, let's say, are really teeny, too far apart to bury the thread between them, so we have to trim each one. A lot of people would be tempted to just do number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. The problem with that is these are so close together that the machine is trimming and it's not moving far enough to pull the tail out of the hole in the needle plate, and then you're sewing again and you get all this. So it's better to spread them all out. So the vector line can help you with the path there. So this would be something like I would start here, then I'm going to do this star, then I'm going to come up and do this star, back down here, and back over here. You can even put a little arrow if you like, just to show you which direction you're going. Alright, so that tells me number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5. That spreads the stars out and gives the machine a much better chance at trimming with 20 stitches between trims, which isn't a great idea, but sometimes we're stuck on it. So the arrows can help you with your path. Write things down. All the help you can give yourself, the better, definitely. So hopefully the vector lines plotting out helped you. It will assist you in your further logo work. If you don't have the vector lines, like I say, you can use the walk stitches. What I would do there is color them a really bizarre fluorescent color or something you're not going to stitch, so that it reminds you to delete them at the end. So hopefully this helps you out and you'll be better at plotting, and your speed will increase, and frustration will be a lot less. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.